life update. What have we been doing the last week since we...
Okay, well, it was Christmas.
Yes.
And it was fucking chaos. We broke a toilet, had to get a new toilet. We had family in town. I'm exhausted. I didn't want to make any more decisions for the rest of the weekend. I snuck away to Starbucks twice because we didn't have a nanny last week either.
No
what about
one, did anyone Christmas Eve you?
Nobody died.
Good.
Nobody Christmas Eved.
Good. Me either. Yeah.
I did just think of something, though, when I was doing the toilet today.
Yeah. How did your toilet break?
It's a long story. It doesn't even make sense. We're not even sure. We basically thought Winter had clogged it and couldn't get the thing unclogged. And she said she put something down there, and we put the snake down there, and it kept getting stuck. And we couldn't get the snake through. And we're like, okay, so let's take it off and just tip it upside down and whatever. So we tried that, and we still couldn't get it. And so he's like, it's lodged right there. And I was like, well, should I bang it open so we can see what it is? We have to get a new toilet now. And he's, yeah. So I banged it, and there was nothing in there. So I broke the toilet for nothing. But in the process, I opened up the back of it and saw how the water comes through. And like, I don't know if you guys have ever done that where you see how the toilets actually work, but it's either our toilet was so old or there was some sort of something wrong with the pump, but there was like shit in there. Maybe like actual feces, but definitely like...
It's like
rust. Like all nasty. And I remember one time at your house, I bobbed for something in your toilet.
Why?
Because me, you, and Erica were playing a game, and I had to bob.
God.
Was it a bob for apples? I had to bob for apples in there, and I was thinking about that moment when I was cleaning, looking at the toilet. I'm like, I put my mouth in this. I used to think toilet water was clean. It's not. Don't bob for apples.
You bobbed for apples in my toilet?
And I'm pretty sure
I like would
she
not
did
put
too.
That past us. Wow. I do remember making weird concoctions at the kitchen table with you and Erica and forcing each other to drink them. Do you want to start, or are we not starting yet? Take one.
Welcome to 6 Feet Unfiltered, where we talk bodies, boner, and banter. Okay, take two.
Where body's boner and... Okay.
What other B is there?
Banter.
I know, but...
Boning.
Where we talk...
Bodies.
But we don't want to talk about banter.
Your go-to hosts for the best...
Bodies, banter, and boning.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a work in progress.
We're going to discuss Season 1, Episode 2, titled The Will. First of all, Courtney, what were your overall general impressions of this episode?
My overall takeaway was actually pertaining to Nate. Like, I actually felt connected with him, and how I feel like he's trying his best in this.
Oh, okay.
But that theme had come up several times.
Yeah.
Of where I felt like he was trying hard. What?
You're connecting to something. So I did a very minimal bit of research. Not really. I was like trying to do some more research, and all I really found that was like kind of fun. I do have some trivia from IMDb that we will credit them, but fun stuff to read. But to your point, it's about the dead guy peeing. But
The dead guy.
the angel.
Yeah.
That was funny. Sorry.
Angel us.
But okay, so you just said how you really felt for Nate or whatever. So I watched this. I'll read more, describe exactly what the source was later because I put it in my notes. But I watched this YouTube video of a reunion of a bunch of the cast.
Oh.
Took place in 2020, like right when COVID was happening. And it was like... Rachel Griffith she's Australian. So they were all on like Zoom screens. It was horrible audio. They had Alan Ball, the writer, on there. And one of the questions that the host from whatever like media agency asked them all, she like asked a few people like a bunch of different questions. And she had asked Michael C. Hall, which character did you feel for the most? Like which character do you feel like had the hardest time like in the overall show? And I could not believe he said Nate. And I was like dying. And like it was so funny because the overall conversation on the show, and Peter Krause, who played Nate, was on there too, and it was all just there was no like acknowledgement or mention at all of Nate's character being even like a little bit like icky, and I'm like over here hating him, and I was just like,
I think that's why I'm going into it this time too, thinking about that. But I have to say, part of that validate, I am the oldest in the sibling, the way that the sibling goes. You are the youngest / only. So that is another huge difference in the way that we were brought up.
Very different.
And so that I think I see a lot of what he's doing. So for me, the last 5 to 10 years, I have delved so deep into trauma and just trying to like cure and heal my inner self, my inner child, and hear from them. And so I've been working really hard trying to shut the fuck up sometimes and just listen to people's feelings, because when you're the oldest, you kind of just take this persona on that nobody actually explicitly tells you, but it's just an understood thing of being in charge. And like,
and I feel like if you didn't have any siblings, you would still have that personality.
I probably would.
Like, that is also, yeah.
It'd be interesting. I would love to see another.
I totally think that you are correct in what you're saying, but I also think it's doubled with you because you are just a naturally dominant personality too.
Probably. I have had people say that I'm just a force and sometimes too much. And that's okay. I'm trying to find a balance between it, because then I'm thinking about the things for some reason, this popped up in my head watching this episode, was back at Hardee's when we were working, and I got Riley hired.
How we worked at Hardee's together.
Yeah, we worked at Hardee's together. I was the manager, obviously. Chloe was the worst. You were like, well, you were smart.
I'm fucking smart. I just didn't like working at Hardee's that much.
She'd pay people like $10 to do their
literally
her side
it was
work.
like your career, like in high school. Which more power to you at this point. Okay,
I probably spent more time there.
But yeah,
but I know. And then like all of the things there, it's funny because I can recognize those moments at working there specifically that I am proud of, like speaking up for yourself, for one. That's something that's really hard for a lot of people to do, but I could have done it in a different way. And that's how I felt about being a big sister. And I came into motherhood knowing those things and wanting to correct them. So like I want to be in charge and whatever, but I want to be like more of that healer and help guide you. And yes, rather than authoritarian. That gave me the ick. And I can see that Nate maybe was that back at Hardee's back in the day, doing his own thing. It's my way or the highway kind of a mindset. And so now after his dad died, I can see him trying to reconcile all of those things and validate people's feelings, like Ruth wanting to be whatever. And he's trying to validate David's feelings about him having to split the store and the will. And then we'll get into a lot of the other things too. But
that's a really interesting thing I'm like imagining Nate being like bossy. I don't know if I can get there in terms of thinking him like that, but I do think
and they never tell us.
Yeah, that's true. He does say that he's worked his way up, though, at the chain at Trader Joe's. Sorry, I love
the
Nate,
co-op, they call it.
But I don't know if I can go as far as to saying that I can imagine him being, like, a authoritative figure, but I can totally imagine him, and that is his character, is to have just always done what he wanted to do. And, like, now he's starting to learn what empathy is.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he always knew.
He is a kind person.
Yes.
I don't think he's an unkind person.
Yeah. It just took him till 35 to go through it, where I started when I was, like, 25. I basically started that journey right after I found out I was pregnant.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. I just can see a lot of that. How did you feel about the episode?
I thought, okay, so this episode was, like, when I first watched, I never thought that there were any episodes that were, like, I don't really, like, this is boring to me. But going through and watching it like this and like taking notes, I'm like almost kind of in a way like statistically analyzing the amount of like types of things. I'm literally like taking notes and color coding them. So it's like you can see, oh, there's not quite as much like juiciness in this one. There's so many. That's like the main thing. Usually in my like exploration, which basically just means Reddit threads of like people's opinions about this show, it's either they absolutely love it and it was life-changing like you and I, or it's like it's too boring, it was too slow, I couldn't get into it. And I've always thought, oh, people who say like it's too boring, it's like they're just not paying close enough attention, they're not letting themselves really get
to let your guards down.
It. Yeah, you have to pay attention and get into it. And I recognize that is a hard thing to do in this day and age. I struggle with paying close attention to things, but luckily I was able to with this show. But this was one of those episodes I was watching and I was like, I can kind of see how a person who struggles to like emotionally attach to characters maybe would get bored with this hour and maybe feel if all of the episodes are going to be like this, like I don't want to watch this. But
I have a question because as you're speaking, I'm thinking, I think that's why Rob didn't like this show. My husband, he's now watching it again and he doesn't love it. He struggles with depression. Do you feel like depression has a lot to do with that? It's not as stimulating. It almost has to, when you're in that depressive mode, you have to be brought so quickly out into it to get attached to it.
Because your brain wants like dope, like the dope.
And it doesn't give you that right away because you're so used to shutting those things off.
And I think there's definitely, that is true what you're saying, and shows, me being the nostalgia nerd I am, but going back to this was 2000, 2001, so they didn't have smartphones and didn't have the rapid fire dopamine addiction that everyone had. So it was like they didn't have the same kind of algorithm they were trying to obtain, if you will, by creating shows back then. They had the leeway to be able to be a little bit more drawn out because people's attention spans weren't as shit as they are now.
And that back then, they probably aired this once a week. Whereas now you can sit down and binge watch it, which would help somebody who needs more of that time to get into things. Interesting. We are not therapists, by the way, either.
No.
We just pretend sometimes.
Not at all.
We therapize each other.
Through therapy.
Yes.
I'm in therapy. I saw my therapist today.
Yep.
I love her.
I'm a twice a month therapy and couples therapy for years, 10 years.
Full-on therapy.
Advocates.
Yes, the word. Back to like your comment about depression, though, I think that's a really interesting concept too to think about because you could watch this show when you are super depressed and have an epiphany and reclaim your life, or I feel like it could go 100% the opposite direction and
feed into the depression,
spiral into the opposite spectrum of nihilism, like nothing matters and we're all gonna die anyway, so yeah, I can totally see how mental health issues could contribute to one's perception or opinion on this show, or any show really.
And knowing Brenda, I think she struggles with depression in the show.
Oh, yeah.
But covers it up very well. Part of her depression, I think, is that she's so intelligent. She knows so many things.
Yes.
That has to be depressing. Do you know what I'm saying?
Courtney, I need to read a quote to you right now by Virginia Woolf. I'm not even kidding you.
Okay, we're going to put up the quote on the screen.
Yes, we will. This will be worth it because this is so on par with exactly what you're saying. I just need to find it. And whoever designed the new iPhone photo app.
Oh my God, nudes.
Not nudes.
Just kidding.
I wish it was nudes. It'd be cuter. Okay, here it is. I found it. All right, listen to this. And I feel like this is
what I'm trying to say.
This is like Brenda's psyche. Quote, "There is a kind of sadness that comes from knowing too much, from seeing the world as it truly is. It is the sadness of understanding that life is not a grand adventure, but a series of small, insignificant moments, that love is not a fairy tale, but a fragile, fleeting emotion, that happiness is not a permanent state, but a rare, fleeting glimpse of something we can never hold on to. And in that understanding, there is a profound loneliness, a sense of being cut off from the world, from other people, from oneself." Virginia Woolf.
Okay, that's fucking weird because that's literally what I was thinking.
I know.
I think we're smarter than we think.
I think that's why we love Brenda. Because
Yeah.
we both also feel. That's why I have that saved on my motherfucking phone. Because I read that and I was like, oh shit. Getting deep right away. Okay, we haven't even gotten to the opening death scene yet. Opening death scene for season 1, episode 2. It opens with a kind of death that makes you reflect on life's unpredictability and the tangled web we often leave behind. Chandler Swanson, a man who built his fortune through a massive financial scheme, is living the highlight. Luxury home, glistening pool, and all the trappings of success. But as we know, appearances can be deceiving. So while enjoying a swim in his lavish pool, Chandler tragically hits his head on the bottom, losing consciousness and ultimately his life. It's a sudden, unexpected end that feels all too fitting for a man whose life was built on shaky foundation. The aftermath is heartbreaking. His young widow is left not only grieving, but also blindsided by the revelation that their wealth was built on a scam. Instead of financial security, she inherits a mountain of debt, forcing her to confront the harsh reality of her husband's double life. This scene captures the show's brilliance in blending tragedy with the complexities of human relationship. It's a stark reminder that death doesn't just take, it leaves behind ripple effects that everyone else has to navigate, which I felt is so true. It's a perfect lead-in to another episode exploring life's messy, beautiful contradictions. But I really like that ending there. It's a stark reminder that death doesn't just take, it leaves behind ripple effects that everyone else has to navigate. And
Yes.
that is like literally...
So long story short, a douchebag who's been scheming off people
period
and
string
has
type deal.
and has a wife and a brand new baby, tries to show off by smoking his ciggies and his cigars at his pool, jumps in the pool, cracks his head open, leaves his wife not only as a widow, but a new mom with no money and a lot of people running after her.
Yeah, which was so sad. And she had no idea. She was, clearly didn't know her husband very well, but she had no idea about his scheme. She wasn't in on it with him or anything. So I definitely did feel for her.
Oh,
real,
God,
real.
yes. At first, no, I hadn't watched it in a long time, but as a first-time viewer, you're probably watching, and you might even think that she's in on it.
Yeah.
And you can very quickly tell that is not the case.
She was very naive. And she just played, whoever the actress was, I don't know, but she played a very good, doe-eyed, naive, innocent, young mother.
What do I do for my baby?
Yeah.
That was all she could think about was taking care of her baby. Mm-hmm. And as a mom, I can sympathize with that so much.
Yeah, it was really sad, but not as much sad for the person who died because apparently he was kind of a skis.
Well, yeah.
Yikes. So the episode opens with a morning after scene featuring our faves,
Couple of the hour,
David and Keith. So you had a note about this one, Court.
This actually pissed me off. Nathaniel Fisher is in David's mind after they wake up having sex, and he goes, "So which one of you is the wife?"
David
and
was
I feel
having sex
like
with Keith.
Yes, David was having sex with Keith, and Nathaniel Fisher in David's mind, like what do you call that?
Like his ghost or specter or something.
I like that. His ghost. Duh. I was like, so which one of you's the wife? And I'm like, that's such a 2000 thing to say. And it pissed me off as a queer person. That's not, you can't just like gender form people that way.
How much of that do you think was in David's mind, and how much of that do you think was really what he would have said if he were there?
Oh!
Because that is like what they want us to question, right?
Yes.
And I feel like
David still seems like he's not fully accepting of his own self.
100%. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think that we'll talk more about Jennifer, David's ex-fiance, later.
Oh, yeah, she comes in.
But even she mentioned something about, or kind of alludes to the fact that
they knew.
Well, like, she like kind of teases that they never fully come out and say for sure, but she knows because she said, tell me about him. Well,
that scene just screamed rude to me, and I didn't even think about it as who is it really projecting.
Jennifer alluded to the fact that
I'm talking about
I know, but she was like saying like basically the message, I think that like overall in terms of Nathaniel's thoughts toward David, like that the writers wanted the viewers to get out of this episode, at least how I interpreted it, is that like David was way too afraid and that Nathaniel most likely would have been way more accepting that David is assuming. But David is assuming what we're seeing. Which is his imagination, having his dad in the room with him and his boyfriend waking up and being like, so which one of you is the wife? Like, I took that as way more of a likelihood that is how Nathaniel sounds in David's mind as opposed to how he really was.
Yes, and we see a lot of that theme pop up,
Yeah.
even just through this episode, but through the rest of the series too.
Yeah.
But let's be real. What does that even mean? The wife, the one that does everything? Come on. And gets no thank you? Who even wants to be the wife?
Yeah, literally.
I'd rather be the husband.
It's so interesting to think about too, like, if you are looking at it from the perspective of that just being purely David's imagination, that's the first thing that comes to your mind of like, so that's like your biggest fear that people are like wondering.
That people will actually think that?
Yeah, and that's probably
And how will he explain that?
for him at that time, but it's enlightening to really force yourself to put yourself to a position of a character that like obviously neither one of you or I are gay men in 2000, so it's wow, so that's the kind of things
that they were thinking about.
Yeah, and there's an episode, I don't know if you remember or not, but it's pretty soon, it's in the first couple of seasons, that it's based on the murder of, now I'm not Matthew Shepard, but it doesn't say like his name in there, but I know that the episode was based on that. It was like when
And he's gay.
Yeah, the gay man gets
I do
shot
remember that.
or whatever, and he dies.
And that was a huge
One of the saddest episodes that they have, but that was like the tone then, which is so depressing, but also.
And who the fuck's business is it either?
No.
Who's the wife? I mean, if you ask my husband, I'm the one that wears the pants in the relationship. So I don't know what that means. But at what point is it anybody else? My mom's not going to ask us who wears the pants or who's the wife. You know, I don't know. It's just so weird.
Hopefully anyone out there who's listening to this, plus you and I obviously can agree on the fact that perception of queer people in general is outdated and rude.
It's like Friends.
We're going to bury that.
Sometimes you can just be like, okay, that was the times. I know I saw that. I wasn't trying to freak out.
You're a little think bug. I'm going to put you in the fake plant so you don't call on me.
Oh,
Just kidding.
Okay, well, he's down for the count.
He
Better
went
than a
rolling.
spider. Okay, and so now what do you think about, because this was something that you and I both realized. Brenda talks about, she's giving a massage, which by the way, I can tell Brenda knows how to do a massage. She wasn't like fake, like doing the things like just
She
for the
was
picture.
really
She was getting in there.
getting
She
in
did the
there.
arm in the back and did one of these. And
This-
she said, what did she say? Oh, you're wounded?
Yes, this was my favorite scene.
Mine too. Gave me goosebumps.
Same. It's for multiple reasons in the same little chunk. But basically, after the morning after scene with David and Keith, we cut to Nate and Brenda. Nate's getting a massage from Brenda, and that's her thing, isn't it? Like
She's
shiatsu or something that she
Shiatsu
does?
massage, but she also does other. I think she's just starting. There's one of my favorite scenes is coming up.
We'll get to it. It's a teaser. But yes, so she's doing this like intense massage. Side note, oh my gosh, Brenda's whole house.
Everything's on the ground. I've noticed.
It's like minimalism before minimalism was cool. Or
Yeah.
maybe somebody's gonna, if anybody ever watches our show, I'm sure somebody will comment and be like, minimalism was a thing forever. But literally,
I think she's grounding. She's
Yeah.
ground. That's why her bed is on the ground. They eat on the ground.
it makes
she doesn't
perfect sense.
notice. She doesn't wear socks or shoes in her house.
Yes.
When do you see that happen on TV?
Yes,
It's very intentional that she's in no socks and shoes.
it's like a very advanced level of like, it's almost like she's like a monk or something. Not literally, but that like she's so
One with the earth.
elevated. Like she's she is one with her surroundings. Like her space is beautiful and minimalistic, but she has this like, she does shiatsu massages out of her home. Like that's her job, I guess. And she's doing one on Nate, and she's like rubbing his back, and Courtney said like pulling his arm back, whatever. And
She's trying to find out where his wounds are.
yeah, I'm just trying to find like where you're wounded. And then Nate was like wounded. He like made some kind of like silly joke or something like that. And this was like one of the best quotes, but she was like, no, seriously, we carry our wounds around with us throughout life, and eventually they kill us. Things leave a mark in space and time in us. Oh my gosh, how much more profound can you get, literally? But then Nate is like, shows
He
his
laughed.
face.
Yep.
He's like literally Beavis and Butthead style, just
So annoying. That
he
would have
couldn't
annoyed
handle
the
it.
shit of
He
me.
could not handle it, and she was just like, I don't know. I feel like she is already keyed in on who Nate is as a person anyway.
She
so-
didn't take it offensively.
Yeah, she didn't get offended or anything. But he said to her, "You're supposed to be my haven away from all that."
And she goes, I'm not supposed to be anything. And I was like, love you to the fucking
Dead.
Dead. It was
I'm
great.
Sorry. And it wasn't just in passing. It was like, look him in the eye.
And then kissed him.
I'm supposed to be anything. Motherfucker.
Yeah. How often, like, growing up,
Literally. That's all
to be
we're
able to
trained
say
to
that,
think.
we wouldn't have been able to say that growing up.
No, even
To advocate for our own self and be like,
yes.
get out of here. I'm not anything to you.
If I could give every woman on this universe one little piece of power, it would be that bottled up into a little fucking star. Like, Mario, take this. Put this in
Put
your
it in a perfume and
yes.
spritz it.
I am not supposed to be anything. And that is why we love Brenda.
I'm telling you, I have to reiterate this. I've loved Brenda since day one. It took Chloe a whole time to come through. And so now she's seeing it on my level.
Yes, I said before.
I forget what you said about her, though.
I said this before, but I felt that Brenda was so foreign to me. That's the word I use. I feel like that's a very accurate description. Like, I had never, and that makes perfect fucking sense, but I had never encountered or been around or experienced or been influenced by a strong, independent woman like that. So witnessing somebody like that, and this goes perfectly into the next note I wrote too, but witnessing somebody like that, like on a TV show, it was just like,
did it feel uncomfortable?
It was confusing, I think, because so young, early 20s watching this, and it was like, you grow up and you like have your life and everything kind of fits into certain categories.
Yep.
And then this
Which
was,
you do, that's
like,
what you, that's how your brain worked, it felt like.
I very much, literally very much, I have major anxiety. So I based a lot of earlier life decisions around security and safety, I think, or just my understanding of how things were supposed to be.
Yes. And it's okay to have that, and then it's okay to reflect on that.
I mean, yeah, I feel like that's so many people's experience. But do you want to know something super interesting that you're gonna think is crazy? I said I watched like that video on YouTube that I'll link for credit or whatever, but it had the reunion cast, and one of the questions that the interviewer had asked Alan Ball, the writer of this series, he basically ended up saying how, he was like, the one piece of feedback that they got from HBO when they were first piloting the series was like, just make it more fucked up. Like, it's good, but just make it a little bit more fucked up. And so he was like, I'm never gonna hear that again. I've never heard that before. He was like, all right, so let's go. And do you want to know what change he made? Or he made multiple, but one of the changes he made from how it was originally written to how it ended up coming out.
No, tell me.
Brenda's whole fucking character. She was supposed to be the typical girlfriend. Like, the typical girlfriend archetype. They even used the word archetype in there. I could not believe it. And then he was like, so we made her more of her own person, like in her own right.
They made her a real woman.
Yeah.
And that was more fucked up.
Like, I give them the credit for doing that.
Yes.
But how crazy is it that, like, literally, even it just proves our point that
yes.
even when this show was literally first written and went to production, Brenda was supposed to be the typical female girlfriend arc that just like swoons over her boyfriend, and that's her whole fucking role. Like, thank God.
They actually, oh my God.
Thank God.
I don't know whether to be upset or
I know,
excited.
It's fuck you, but like also thank God, but what the hell? It's just, it proves our point, honestly, essentially.
I also wanted to point out that if you're watching this and you've seen 6 Feet Under once or twice or a million times, and now you've stumbled upon the podcast and you hear us talking about Brenda, the reason I bring up the fact that Chloe didn't feel that strong connection the first time like I did the first time and the second time, I think it's important to know that you can watch a series and watch a character and then rewatch it at a different point in your life or just right away after, and then start to understand and experience things differently. So if you didn't like Brenda the first time you watched this, I challenge you to go back and rewatch the series and just take some of our tidbits and keep that in the forefront of your mind and know that being fucked up is actually what we're trying to be.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah, according to Alan Ball.
I guess. Yeah, very interesting. Oh my gosh, that was another note that I put in here. Super fun fact, random, that I got from that same YouTube video. Whoever plays Rico, you don't know who Justin Long is? Whoever plays Rico, I can't think of his name, but just look up what movie he got in 2001. In this YouTube video reunion that I watched, they said that
Jeepers Creepers.
I knew it was going to be that one. Oh my God, I'm dead. That's so funny. We have to put an overlay of Justin Long with Jeepers Creepers on here. But Justin Long was supposed to play Rico.
Can you picture? Oops. Actually, I could see that. But Rico's so good at being Rico.
I'm so glad that they picked Rico. And you know what? Also,
who is Rico? What is he? What's his name?
Federico.
I know. What's his real name?
I don't know. I forgot. Federico Diaz. It's his name. That's his name. His name is the same.
Played by Freddie Rodriguez.
So his name is Freddie Rodriguez, and he played Federico Rodriguez. That's actually kind of funny.
No, he played Federico Diaz.
Oh yeah, you're right. Different name. Shit. Sorry.
Interesting.
Okay, but he also said in there, he was so sweet to watch. You guys I'm going to link that video and everyone else should watch it.
We should, because we don't like him. And so it'll make me like him, maybe.
Yeah,
okay.
It was very endearing. I mean, I don't know. I honestly feel like his actual personality.
Let's take a moment, actually, to remind everybody that the villains in our TV shows that we love to hate, we don't actually have to hate them in real life. Yes. I see so much hate for a lot of the villains in Game of Thrones, or I'm a Game of Thrones watcher, but they're
very valid human beings based on fictional things.
But sometimes they're such good actors and actresses. You do. So you just have to
What's a good example of that?
A villain? Ramsay Bolton from Game of Thrones. Did you ever watch it?
Yes, and the blonde guy.
Yes, Joffrey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Joffrey
he has a hateable face. I'm sorry.
And he's like the sweetest thing ever. He literally moved to... So clearly that's the point.
Okay, yes. But, okay, Justin Long was supposed to play Rico. Crazy shit. That's my point. And then at the end, Brenda and Rico get into a conversation talking about how Alan Ball portrayed minorities, aka women / Latinx people, and Keith, a black gay man, how he was, just like we said in our first episode, before either of us had ever even watched this YouTube video, but how progressive he was and how he really provided them with a platform to expand on. And it was very interesting. And I think it was very on par with what you and I recognize anyway.
I also don't think there was any hate. Well, I shouldn't say hate, but I didn't feel like he was following the normative, the women, the minorities. He wasn't following the types.
Yeah, that's exactly what they said.
He was trying.
Or Freddie, whatever, was saying, he was like, the only time that Latinx people had been portrayed in media up until that point, for the most part, they were all gang members or they were in a very stereotypical light. So he viewed them like actually as people. Another thing I just thought of that.
And very good at his job. He was
so good.
Been awarded, probably nothing, but.
You guys you got to go watch that reunion show because even.
I have not seen it. I'm going to watch it after this.
It's horrific audio, I will say. But it's very interesting to learn more about Alan Ball's career. He also directed American Beauty, which I've never seen that.
Oh, what?
Yeah, I've never seen
it.
It's
fucked.
I'm going to have to watch it.
And it's weird watching it now with...
I don't know what it's about, so I don't know why it would be weird, but I'm going to watch it.
Who's the main actor in it?
I don't know. I've never seen.
He got in trouble for child porn.
Oh, well, who hasn't these days? Jesus fucking Christ.
Kevin Spacey.
Oh, yeah. God damn it, motherfucker. Well, apparently 6 Feet Under got canceled, and Alan Ball, this was unclear. They didn't specify exactly the stakes.
They talk about this in the video?
Yeah, but Rico, or Freddie, was saying how 6 Feet Under got canceled, and then Alan Ball won an Emmy or a Grammy or something for Beauty.
Oh, that's where you're going with this. So they restarted.
Rebooted it or whatever, and then Justin Long was originally supposed to play Rico, but then he dropped out to play fucking Jeepers Creepers, and Alan Ball or whoever the casting director was, they casted Freddie Rodriguez, and Alan Ball approached Freddie at the initial table reading or something and was like, I just want you to know, I wrote this character with you in mind. So he went back and rewrote the character to be specific. Freddie Rodriguez as a Latinx character.
Yes.
It was so interesting and very sweet. So next up, we have the scene where they're at the kitchen table at the Fisher house, and it's Nate and David and Claire
eating breakfast.
And Nate has just come home from an overnight, which is unknown.
Didn't they both just come home from an overnight?
Yeah, I think that Nate also did. Probably because he was at Brenda's.
Yeah, I think they did. But they're wearing his same clothes.
Yes. And Nate's giving David shit for having been out on a date night or whatever.
And he keeps calling the person, the unknown.
Come on, dude, who is she? And he's, are you back together with your ex or whatever?
Was it Jennifer?
And then at a certain point,
Claire looks up and she's, shut up. Leave him alone. Yeah. I don't even remember her.
She was like, shut up, asshole.
Yeah.
And then David was like, thank you, Claire. And walks out of the room.
But he looks at her as in knowing.
Yeah.
He
knows. They have it locked in at that moment where it's okay.
That's why I put that in there.
Know, or how I know you know.
But we all know you know I know.
Yeah. And they were
but he don't know I know we know we know.
Yeah, exactly. And then I also loved, even after David walks out of the room, Claire is still grumbly at Nate and was like, when are you going to go back to Seattle anyway? Or whatever. It's just, I just love her orneriness of teenage angst. Okay, and then shortly after that
is the will reading.
We get to the major scene of this episode where they read the will, and they're at the will reading place, wherever they do that. And we find out that Nathaniel left
the business to both the sons, Nate and David, which is ironic because Nate has never been in the business and never wanted to, and left Claire a full college education, which actually irritated the piss out of me too.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Not that I wasn't pissed that he didn't leave Claire the business. I was just upset that he was basically, I think I put it in there too. It did feel like they were all feeling, it was interesting to see that they all felt forced into their life's decisions based off of their dad's will.
Was blackmailing them from beyond the grave is how Claire worded
yes.
it.
And I actually do, I don't think that was the case. I think that I think we can agree Nathaniel Fisher was not a shitty person.
I agree, yeah.
And I don't think he was trying to blackmail anybody. He just wanted what he assumed was best for his children. But that's not always the case. We might think we know what's best for our kids.
I don't think anyone was at fault, but I understand everyone's reaction.
Yes, I fully validate all of their reactions because then, you know, Claire's, what if I don't go to college? How do I get do I get anything? And the guy was, well, you'll get when you turn 25 or some shit like that.
Yeah.
Which to her as a 17, 18-year-old, turning 25 is actually like 30 years from now.
Yeah, for real. I mean, like, can you imagine? And she's already I honestly identify with her so much because don't you remember, I literally have vivid memories of walking up the step in our high school together with you, like, because we had classes together senior year and like English or like advanced English classes we would take
English
together.
comp or whatever.
And we'd be walking in. I was so grumbly, just like Claire, about I hated life. I hated going to high school every day. Like, I just had that teenage angst that she has. So like, I can totally feel her
pressure. He actually, the dude that was reading the will, said, okay, Claire goes, what do I do if I don't go to college? And he goes, well, you need it these days, not just to succeed, but to survive. And I'm like, that is so fucking gross. We don't need everybody to go to college. We need trades. We need people to just get out and start doing things. We want people to be entrepreneurs. And you don't have to go to school to be an entrepreneur. YouTube that shit.
Honestly, college is a product of the patriarchy, but so is everything. Oops.
Ain't that the truth, though?
Literally. It is. It literally is. That I was going to ask you about your thoughts on Nathaniel not leaving any of the business to Claire, because I thought that, I know it's Fisher and Sons, but okay, just like perspective wise, think about Nate has absolutely no experience or business. He's literally like equivalent to Claire in terms of knowledge or expertise. Why was Claire not included in, why didn't he split it into thirds? Isn't that interesting to think about now?
Yeah, you're right. It is. And I have a couple ways that I can think about it. One is that the idea of Fisher, Claire might not always be a Fisher.
Yeah.
Which also irritates the piss out of me because in today's world, some of us don't take our husband's last name.
Exactly.
The last name business is just so irritating. I just can't even.
And he even goes on to say in one of David's flashbacks, I don't remember if either of us wrote any notes about it, but later on in the episode, Nathaniel, as his ghost self, is saying to David, well, you're not going to have any kids. It's Fisher and Sons. This has to continue. And I think that was a major part, is like a very antiquated
foreshadowing
and just way of going about things, but that's just how things have always been done. But it's interesting to cast a modern light on it and see. I mean, I think
Claire wouldn't have wanted anything to do with it just as much as Nate, though, which is why you're at, interesting.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting to think about. It's understandable, but
and now you can see why they might have felt like it was blackmail.
For sure. Okay. So then the casket part.
$9,000 for a fucking casket in 2000. So what does that equal today? 20,000, 30 grand?
I don't know. Let's look up inflation here. 80% inflation. So it would be $16,000 today. That's probably accurate. Basically, almost doubled. That's probably accurate because I feel like inflation is
okay, so a $9,000 casket in 2000, which was a big one.
It was like their most expensive bougie casket.
And then today, you could spend almost $20,000 on a casket. Please don't do that for me. No. $13.
I hope that all of us just burn us all and throw us in the forest.
Way cheaper. Oh my God. Because that could have, I mean, think about it, $9 grand. She didn't even have a pot to piss in since her husband had
explain
died.
The context of what we're talking about.
So the $9,000 casket comes from the Swanson family from when Chandler was dead, and Mrs. Swanson comes to Fisher and Sons to get funeral arrangements, all this stuff. And David basically gets his name, asks, what do you do for a living? And he goes, okay, so big venue.
Because he recognized the name, because she was like, he's the one who invented Beauty Vision or whatever his
yes,
company
it was Beauty Vision.
Mm-hmm.
And So he, in his mind, as the sales guy, he sees dollar signs and he's, okay, so how can I get as much money out of these people as I possibly can? And we haven't even gotten to the part where he talks about the markup of that. It was like a $6,000 markup. So it only cost them $3,000 to get this casket. They're selling it for $9,000. And that's the tip of the iceberg.
That's how they sell it to the dead guy's widow before they realize that her credit cards decline. And so they have this casket that they like ordered for this quote unquote rich dead guy, but then the wife didn't know that the whole thing was a scam. So then they're in this position where they have this casket that she can't actually afford and they don't know what to do with it.
So in the moment, David is the one dealing with Mrs. Swanson. She has the baby, she's crying. I literally watched him go like this. He pushes the Kleenex towards her. She grabs the Kleenex, wipes her nose, and then he goes, what kind of car would your husband want to drive? It's like he continues this whole sales spiel and gets the high sales out of her. A couple days go by, they realize that the cards declined, yada, yada, yada. She can't afford it. Now, Nate is all of a sudden a business partner. And so David is full of shit to do. So David says, can you deal with Mrs. Swanson today? Can you tell her that she can't afford this funeral? So Nate was like, I guess. Yes, I'll go. So Nate goes to then meet with Mrs. Swanson for the now second time. And it's a similar situation, sitting across from each other. Nate is like, you can't afford this. Like, your husband, XY, here's the credit reports. Like, here's the things that we pulled. This is all the proof. And she just bursts into tears because she's like, what the fuck? She probably hates her dead husband at this point and is holding like a baby. She can't go back to...
And Harvard wants everyone to
stop saying that he went. It was Yale. Yale would like him to quit telling people that he went there. And so I love that part. Like, what the fuck? And Nate doesn't know anything about the business yet, but you can tell he has that empathic feel and he's trying to right things and he wants people to feel heard and to help fix things. Yes. And so he not only gets her a tissue, but he gets off of the couch, goes over and is like holding her. So if you put those two side by side, it's a completely different experience that she's getting. He then offers to rent it to her and have a small have a small funeral. It's literally just Nate, the widow, and the dead guy in the $9,000 casket that is not going to be hers. They're going to cremate him.
Which was illegal this whole time, but Nate
didn't know because he doesn't know anything about the business yet. But yada,
that's a very large leap to take in assuming things will be fine by offering to put a dead body into a casket and just like renting it.
I would have thought, I was thinking the same way as Nate.
Yeah, I can see you
doing
doing
that. But then Federico was like, but then there's spillage and he spilled. He seeped.
Yes,
or whatever.
Yes, I love that.
I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even think about that stuff.
Yeah. I think, well, also to your point, though, and to David's credit, when David was dealing with the widow, he didn't know that the whole business was a scam. He thought, when he took her credit card initially, he thought that he was taking the credit card of a wealthy business owner.
Yes.
But
so he wasn't trying to scam her either.
Right. But
he was doing the sale.
Apt when it comes to comforting people.
Yes.
Like, he was very mechanical. He did do what needed to be done. Like, it was
the bare minimum.
He knew. Yeah. He didn't have his heart in it, though. It was like he paused. Business did it.
Yes. The finesse.
But like
the finesses were different.
Nate is bringing in the like emo juju to the whole business, which is needed, but like
in something. So I remember watching that and I'm like, I remember watching Dave the first time and thinking, is he just done this so many times that he just is so mechanical?
Well, we get to see a little bit revelation of that at the end of this episode when they get on the boat.
Yeah, that is true. That is very true.
I feel like that is all the questions you just listed are like intentionally the writer like wanted us to be thinking about these things. So good. It is so good. We are jumping around a little bit, I feel, but it's fine.
I think we're back to normal.
Back when they're leaving right after they read the will. And Ruth, I don't think I put this down, but she said something funny. Your father knew, because Nate was like, David, I want to give you my half, or at least give it to mom, whatever. And Ruth was like, no, absolutely not. Your father knew what he was doing, and he wanted us all to be happy, and we will be happy. And then everyone was just like, so not happy. And Ruth is just, maybe I'll just move to Florida. And David was like, that's ridiculous, mom. I don't know. It was just like a funny, very relatable.
What did Claire say as they were leaving too? Maybe I'll join the army so I can kill.
Yeah, she's yeah.
Or the Marines.
Yeah, she said something and she was just like very aggressive teen. Love her. And then we cut to back at the Fisher family funeral home and they have a woman there that they're also burying, but it wasn't like the main dead person of this episode.
With jaundice.
Yeah, but she had jaundice. It was like from the funeral home they always get dead bodies from. It's like one of their main streams of income, which is where Rico's wife works as like a CNA or PCA or something. And they had this older woman's dead body, and she was like really badly jaundiced apparently. And a funny moment is Rico's description, and we were saying this before about how we adore how Rico is so excited about all of the things, and I feel like even though he's not like excited in this moment, but he's like
passionate.
Yeah, he just doesn't.
You're not putting my name on that.
Yeah, he's take my name off the certificate. The woman looks like a banana or something like that. It's just like great humor.
Do you want her family to just look at that and put our name on it? Yes. Take my name off the certificate. Yes. If you don't let me airbrush her.
They really start Rico off strong just to let ya down. But then next up, getting into what will eventually become a much larger storyline for a couple episodes, not that big, but we find out, we go back to Claire's little boyfriend situation, Gabe, who is the one who gave her crystal meth in episode 1, which was a downvote, but they go to high school together, and it kind of shows like a little bit of their like chemistry, like warming up, like he's giving her attention, telling her she's unique and different. She drives a green hearse. I mean, she is pretty unique. Yeah. I love her. But also I think Gabe is like one of those people, we had plenty of them that we experienced.
We grew up with Gabes.
Literally. A million of them that are just like, whatever. I think that eventually their relationship does evolve into more than just like him playing her and using her, but also she should have never given him the time of day to begin with. I feel like she likes him because Claire is obviously very deep. She's a very deep intellectual girl, and I think Gabe in a way also is, or he at least knows how to play the game to act like he is. But
I think it was also a game for him because he couldn't catch her like
he could with the chase.
Yes.
But he says to her,
don't even get us started on that.
You know, you're different now. You can see through walls. Talking about how she's different now after she experienced the loss of her father or whatever. And she's just, And then she goes like, I think your skanks need to be walked or whatever. Because
like, word for word.
Literally, it's so funny. Like I love how she is, because honestly, most girls like in that character or in that like scenario would be rated to just be like, she's also kind of like a Brenda offshoot in a way. Like
she's like Brenda's daughter.
Yeah, they have a lot of similarities. But then he goes to her like, I want to see you. And you can see like she smiles, you know, she's smitten with him. We understand the crush. And then we go back to the funeral home where Mr. Jew is the
worst haircut ever.
Seriously, can we talk about it?
It's off. It's not.
Do you think it's real? Is it a toupee?
No, it's real hair and it's a bad haircut.
It was bad.
It's like a clipper cut from Cost Cutters.
Yes, but he basically approaches Ruth in the foyer of their funeral parlor.
What a snake. He's heating up all these people. Ugh, get out of here.
He is being strategic, and he is hitting all his targets. First he went to David. Dave said, fuck you. Then he goes to Ruth because he didn't know that Nate existed yet.
But Ruth gave it away.
Yes, and he was like, did your son David tell you about my offer? And she was like, I don't believe he did. And he was like, well, this is our buyout offer, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's very generous, especially the stock options, yada. And I loved that she was like,
well, you need to take it up with my other sons too, or my other son.
The first thing she said was, who are you to buy us out?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. She's always in defense mode.
Yes. And sometimes it's not necessary, but in this moment, it was, who are you to buy us out? I've never even heard of you or whatever. And then he goes on his whole spiel or whatever.
He's, I didn't know you had another son.
Yeah. She mentions something about, I don't know how they come to revealing that information. Eventually later on he approaches Nate as well, but yeah, he goes, oh really, I only knew of the one son. I know how many sons I have, Mr. Gillard. It was like such a old lady diss.
Yes, and it was almost unneeded. Who would say that?
Yeah, and it was like, you didn't even need to say that, but I'm so glad you did.
Yep. That's the end of the discussion. You can leave now.
And it wasn't even, you couldn't even pin it on her. That was like rude to say. It's just facts. It is like, I know how many sons I have. Like, in other words, you better get the fuck out of my house.
If you don't speak old lady woman, that's what it means.
Yeah.
That's the translation.
All right. This is an interesting part. It really quick shows another kind of like fiasco where they don't have enough people. David needs to do this. Rico needs to do that. He's also being pulled in another direction from his wife and they have kids. She works at the nursing home. There's dead people and they got to transport them or whatever. And Nate's just kind of standing in the background, like with his thumb up his ass, kind of, this is, I feel like, the moment where he starts to come into realization of, oh, you all need help. I need to help you. So they have him go to the nursing home to pick up this dead body of somebody who just passed away.
With Rico's help.
Rico did offer to help, which was very nice. And another bonus for him. They keep wanting us to, they set us up. But then there's this moment then, Rico's wife works at the nursing home and they get into a fight in front of Nate. And Nate realizes that, like, Rico needs to be other places. And he's like, yo, man, because
David will have my ass. David will have my ass if I don't finish this job.
Yeah. Well, and then Rico says, well, Nate says he'll do it for Rico.
Yes.
And then Rico was like, I'm gonna tell David you said I, or whatever. And Nate was like, oh shit. After having watched the whole series and going back and rewatching, when I watched the scene, I was like, this is probably like an integral moment for Nate where he's
assuming the position.
Yes.
He's accepting it.
Together.
Yes.
That like he's needed. And this is the start of his beginning to build almost an identity or find his purpose. And though he really doesn't do a great job of being solid in that throughout the series, like I think this is the start of an adventure for him in terms of his identity.
Going back to David saying Nate just does whatever he wants. At this moment, he realizes he kind of wants
to support
he
people.
Wants to be needed and he wants to accept that, and so now it's okay.
Yeah.
Rather than he almost had to manipulate himself into it. Does that make sense?
Manipulate himself into being needed.
Yeah, manipulate himself into accepting the responsibilities of this, because it's almost like he's defiant. So if somebody tells him that he needs to do something, he doesn't want to, and it sounds like that's what he was like growing up. I am also very defiant. So he was able to somehow twist the table to make it spin off of it to be like, okay, I am choosing to do this, not somebody's telling me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And especially since it was that specific dynamic with him and Rico, because he's like bros with Rico.
Yep.
So it made it more of David's not trying to like
he's not trying to define
me.
you. No, Rico didn't ask him for help. He stepped in.
Yeah. It had to be his, which is a very narcissistic trait.
Yes, but also I identify with that.
I mean,
I don't think I'm an actual like narcissist,
No,
but I
either.
do feel like I have manipulation qualities that I've recognized that if I need to do something, I have to somehow make it
your choice.
Yes, so that's how I can accept it. If that makes sense. Oh my god,
It totally
probably
does.
Okay.
No, it totally does, because I've literally like on the opposite end worked with so many people who are like, and I love you, and I'm not judging you at all.
I don't expect
like I know from interacting with people like that how you need to interact with them in order to be successful.
Their language. Yep.
So I've been very lucky to experience multiple supervisors.
I also think it's important that I recognize
including you,
that,
I guess.
I didn't know it at the time at heart. That's why it was so hard to work with me. But now I know that's like a quality. Like I'm not trying to run away from who I am. I'm just trying to use it to its best ability. So I know that I have that like defiant disorder of.
And for the record, we have both come so far from wherever we were when we were talking about
20 years ago.
We're not trying to say that's reality right now, but I think that the heart of what we're saying is very valid, in that like we recognize it's once again like the nature of fucking humanity. Like we all have
none of us have to
different
be
traits.
the same.
No, nobody
And
is
we
the
never
same.
will.
We literally all are. So
It's important to recognize who you are, and you can either accept that, and you can still accept it and be complacent, or you can accept it and learn how to use those traits, because some of those things you can't change. Some of them, anxiety and depression, sure, you can take medication for it, but if you boil it down, you still have that part of you.
And everyone, we all have core parts of our
being that we don't necessarily love.
Yeah. Oh, I think we're on the same page
Yeah.
with that. And I don't think you're a narcissist.
I totally called myself out on that one though. Oh my god.
He's not.
But no, I'm not. I promise.
I know some.
We know some. Oh, we won't go there. The boner though. We have to talk about the boner.
Yeah,
the angel
then we
lust.
get to the boner. So Nate has his revelation. Oh, I'm needed. And then all of a sudden they lift the dead guy onto the gurney, and then what happens?
The angel lust, which I was gonna look up if there was any like omens.
So basically what happens is Rico and Nate lift the dead old man body onto the gurney over onto the stretcher so they can wheel him out and bring him back to the funeral home. And the blanket or whatever, like the sheet, slips off of the top of his body, and it shows his
Boner.
his member, his boner. And it's hard, and he's dead. And Nate was very perturbed by that.
I didn't even look at his face. I was looking at the boner.
It was a very quick blip. I honestly don't remember seeing that the first time around. I feel like I missed it. But I have a funny trivia about this.
Oh yeah, you do.
So Rico laughs and is like, oh yeah, that's normal. That happens. And Nate was like, what the fuck? But apparently, this is to IMDb trivia, the death erection shown when Nate and Federico pick up the body from the morgue circumvented HBO's standards and practices. So HBO at the time actually prohibited showing a male in an aroused state. So an actor with a penile pump was used to show the scene of the dead man with a hard penis. And
so it was a real penis.
It was a real penis, and it was really hard, but he pumped his genitals to an erect state before filming, and at no time was the actor aroused during the scene? And that is how they circumvented HBO's, at the time, I'm sure HBO's,
They're clearly off that.
they've moved on. We're talking one here.
Game of Thrones.
But at the time, they weren't allowed to show hard peens. And they showed a hard peen on a dead guy, but it got hard with a penis pump. And I thought that was really interesting, actually.
Wow.
Fun fact.
So they had to literally, instead of him getting a natural boner, which, by the way, a boner doesn't mean you're aroused. It just means that there's blood flow at the tip of your penis, which happens from arousal.
Clearly is.
But it can, when people wake up with a boner, they're not aroused. When people are dead with he wasn't aroused.
They used non-human arousers. I don't know.
That's just, it is interesting
Ergonomic.
to me that
I don't know.
as a sex coach,
yeah,
it is interesting to me seeing you say that it couldn't be. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that a boner doesn't actually equal arousal, and
well, yeah,
arousal doesn't actually equal consent either. But that's a whole other situation.
Yeah,
it was just interesting that they went all of those steps forward to get an erected penis.
I wonder what the behind the scenes looked like in terms of the hoops they had to jump through in order to be able to air that. Like, how did they prove they used a penis pump to get that dick? Like, I don't know, it's interesting, but I totally agree with you. I understand you don't need it.
I know. I'm just digging deep into it because I'm like, well, now I got my wheels spinning.
Yeah,
just so confused.
And even the terms that they apply to it, aroused or whatever, it's interesting.
Yes,
but yeah, so apparently there were no sexy times on set for that. It was just a penis pump. Okay,
or was it?
Yeah, maybe they just said that and we're like, all right, go jerk off for a second. Okay, so then we're back to a scene with Nate, and Brenda is just the spontaneous queen she is and calls Nate. Well, he has a body in the back of the van and was like, hey, I'm at this bar and come have a glass of wine with me, like 15 minutes tops, like whatever. She's so stressful, but like that scene specifically reminded me of you.
Me too.
I feel like you've done that before. Hey, I'm here, meet me.
She very well knew it wasn't going to be a 15-minute conversation.
Yeah, and you do that shit all the time.
Yep. And she was so smooth in the way I believed it. But I knew that it was not going to be a 15.
Yeah.
And I knew that Brenda knew it wasn't going to be a 15-minute.
And I'm sure Nate probably did too. It was an excuse to use, which humans all do, get what they want.
I definitely felt like I have absolutely been in that shoes before.
Brenda calls Nate and was like, meet me here, 15 minutes, whatever. The horn dog that he is, okay, cool. Meanwhile, he's in the midst of picking up a dead body as a favor for David, the one who had the erection. And then he's getting lunch with Brenda, having a few drinks. And Brenda was like, so tell me about yourself. Pretend we've never had sex before or whatever. Like, tell me your spiel. And he said something along the lines of, oh, the self-deprecating life story I tell about myself that almost always gets me laid. And she was like, yeah, that one. And he has this moment where he goes, no, I'm not that guy with you or whatever. What were your thoughts on that?
Been there, heard that.
Yeah.
And then he probably went into what he normally does.
I got the ick a little bit. I got like, it almost is like a callback to the beginning where he said, you're supposed to be my haven away from all this. And she said, I'm not supposed to be anything, which was our favorite line. And it's almost like he's kind of going back to that narrative in a way like, no, you're supposed to be this, or I'm not.
He's still
this.
trying to reel it in.
Yeah, he's still trying to make her be this thing for him that he wants her to be. And she's really, honestly, once again, not really doing anything at all. Just tell me about yourself. Hey, come meet me. It is, I don't know, it's very interesting if you really look deeply into their dynamics. And then we're back at the Fisher household, and David and Ruth are eating together. It's like lunch or something. And she says to him, you know, Nate is not your enemy. He'll do whatever you want. And
she says, Nate is not your enemy. He'll let you do whatever you want.
Is that what he said? She says.
No, he'll let you do whatever you want, meaning as in selling the thing if you want, to sell the company. And David's like, why do you say that? He spent his whole life doing whatever he wants. And for me, that hit weird because I could see David saying that in relation to his brother, thinking about me and my sister being David and me being Nate. And my sister thinking she's not going to do whatever I say because she's just done whatever she wants her entire life. And David feeling some resentment towards Nate. And there's obviously resentment back and forth too. But my sister and I had a huge revelation like 2 Christmases ago, 2 or 3. And it's been our favorite topic of conversation since because we've never been closer from it. And it talked about all of that sibling resentment and the buildup around being so close. Like, I was the oldest. She was 2 years younger than me. But then I'm also seeing it as a mom from Ruth's eyes, as like, I'm thinking of my daughters and how they are going to react with each other. And she's seeing the good and the love that's buried between David and Nate, where I would be seeing the love that's buried between all of my ladies. They're all daughters. And I thought it was so cool that I could sit there and empathize with both sides of it. Whoa. I don't know. I wasn't even stoned when I was watching it, but I was like, whoa.
Yes, I agree. I thought that was really interesting too. Okay, and then
this pissed me off.
Yeah, this was a hard, chaotic moment. David kind of went off, like Courtney said, and was like, he's done whatever he wants. And Ruth was like, I don't like this bickering. And he's, yeah, well, by this point, Nate was in the room also. He had walked in. And he's, yeah, well, I don't like you sleeping with hairdressers. And then
she slaps him.
David is shocked. And Nate was just like, and
I think they walk out and he's like, you don't have to take this out on Mom. What's really going on?
But she slapped him.
Because David was taking it out on him.
David is getting a little bit like out of
child.
Yeah, in terms of speaking to his mother. I will give Ruth that for sure. And I don't remember what part that is, but I don't remember who David was speaking to, but he said something along the lines of, I would have been rewarded the same if I would have wasted my life like, he was speaking to Nate, if I would have wasted my life like you, because he stormed out of the room after Ruth slapped him, and then Nate followed him. And Nate, I don't know, was trying to like smooth things over like he always does, and which is not, I'm not saying that's bad, but David was like basically explained. I thought this was just a really good laying it out clearly for the viewer point of view from David's perspective. He said something along the lines of, apparently, if I would have done whatever I wanted to do with my life, just like you did, I would have been rewarded exactly the same. Why the fuck did I just waste my life sacrificing all the things that I sacrificed if at the end of the day he didn't care who, what? Yeah. So it was like I wanted to validate David in that moment, because even though it's not Nate's fault, and I don't think that he should be taking all of this out on Nate like he is, or Ruth or anything, but I think it was a very good perspective for the viewer to have just very blatantly laid out for them. That is so true, because David devoted his life and he made a lot of sacrifices in his personal life, probably a lot.
He's gonna have resentment for sure
too.
100%.
Like he's in his world like a public figure, like he's the funeral home director, like he has to keep up this image. He can't be who he really is. He can't be gay. He can't be dating a cop, a gay black cop, you know what I mean? Like
it's like being a teacher and an OnlyFan.
Yeah, literally, yeah. And David's saying like,
which neither are wrong, and they should be able to have a coexistence.
Yes,
they should have a coexistence and a separation.
Everybody should have their own autonomy over who they are as a person.
Can be at work,
whether it's OnlyFans
or at home,
or your occupation or your fucking hobbies or whatever.
At home life, and they can coexist and they can be separated.
And that's what Nate chose, how he chose to live his life, which in a lot of ways worked out great for him, but in a lot of ways worked out as a detriment to him. And same with David. He stuck around and he made sacrifices, and it worked out in some ways for him. But also, we're seeing his perspective now. He has sacrificed so much in order to be able to carry on the business, and he wanted to do that for his dad, but it's not his fault that he's not a straight man who will have like biological children to carry on the family name. And like, I think that hurts him so much, but like, it's just not who he is. And oh my God, it's just so much to reconcile with, and I just feel for him. But yeah, it's the whole like premise of the show. You love and hate everybody, and you understand all of their viewpoint. But this was another moment that I loved from Claire. She was talking to Gabe. We're back with Claire and Gabe again, and this is right before a steamy moment. But it basically cuts after that scene to Gabe and Claire making out.
Yep,
and
at his house or something.
The music, I think they were in her hearse, her green hearse she drives around.
I do remember this. Is it this part?
Yeah, in every scene with either, well, they did it with both Claire and Gabe and also Nate and Brenda kind of, but like the mood music they play.
I watched this with the subtitles on, and it explicitly says foreboding music. Just swear to God. Oh, so when I saw that, I was like, oh my God. Because I remember Googling that word, because I'm not that smart. I'll pull up what Google said too.
That's so funny. I literally wrote, what's with the foreboding music they play during Claire and Gabe's makeout scene?
And if you watch it, okay, so The Oxford Dictionary says foreboding means fearful apprehension, a feeling that something bad will happen. With a sense of foreboding, she read the note, kind of a thing. And it's implying or seeming to imply that something bad's going to happen after that. I didn't know that that's what that meant. But when you watch it with subtitles, it says foreboding music, which is kind of like a dead giveaway.
Yeah.
Weird.
It's interesting for sure. And I don't know. I get so wrapped up in how much I love them all. Like, it's hard for me to even express. But Claire and Gabe do have, I think the reason that I have a soft spot for Gabe is because of the emotional connection that Claire builds with him. Because he does have such an openness to her depth that he invites in and builds upon with her. That even though he is a very troubled and toxic human and probably not the best person for Claire to have in her life, he still satisfies this really inherent need that she has and that I think all humans have to just be like seen and heard and understood. And is he a dog and uses her in some ways? Yeah, unfortunately, as most, I won't go there. You can guess what I was going to say.
I already know.
But I feel like that's why I really like him, because he really shows, he's not just, whatever. He really goes there with her. And they have this moment.
He lets his guards down.
Yeah, and he encourages her and he builds her up. But there's a moment where they're having this deep conversation and Claire says to Gabe, well, they're talking about going to college and she's, yeah, I got my whole college paid for. I'm so pissed, basically. And Gabe was like, maybe you should actually not be pissed because that's actually really great.
It is great.
Yeah. And she was just like, this is where she gets emotional and lets her guard down and she shows her true self, but she was just like, I just feel like there's something inside me. I just wish I could figure out what it was before I get completely reprogrammed.
Oh!
Meaning, like...
How do you think that as 17?
She's so beyond.
Yes, she's
so
very
beyond.
wise.
But that's literally the epitome, and I feel for her so much because it's like, she's just, her whole acting out spiel and act is based around her own fear of losing her identity that she hasn't even figured out yet.
Yes, but she doesn't want it to be morphed
relatable
for her. She wants to be able to decide on her own standards.
Which is such an amazing quality for
Yes.
someone to have, to recognize. That,
especially a 17-year-old girl.
yeah, that
It's
you have autonomy
incredible.
over your identity and you get to do what you want with it. And like, she feels that, but she's not being shown, she's not being provided the pathways.
No, because somebody just bought her college education and said, this is what you need to
Yeah.
do to survive.
Yeah.
And literally to survive.
Which is such like a paradox, because that is an amazing thing. How many people wouldn't love to be like, hey, here's your college for free? But still, it's like she's taking it as like an insult because it's not her. She doesn't have autonomy.
Yep.
And she wants autonomy. And that's literally it. Like,
That's huge,
that's
dude.
all fucking women want. And she's the epitome of all of us.
And we're not even talking about like gender.
Yeah.
At this point, we're talking about literal just living.
Existing in the world. Like, she has no autonomy over her life.
Unless she waits till she's 25.
Right.
She'll get autonomy at 25.
But I still think that Gabe was like a good...
He was a good devil's advocate.
Yeah, yes. That's a perfect way to describe it. Literally, he was the perfect devil's advocate, especially for somebody who, honestly, like, does Claire deserve her own autonomy over what she does with her life? Absolutely. But would it probably be good for her to force herself into some kind of...
She has that angst of...
Which could become self-destructive.
Yes.
If it's not guided. And I think that's probably what Nathaniel Fisher was like.
Yeah, he was. This is all coming full circle.
Yeah. It's so... He knows and he loves her, but it's like, I gotta control you a little bit. So you can, I don't know. It's all very relatable and very, very fun to think about and also sad. Then they make out and it's very steamy and there's foreboding music playing.
Okay, so I also brought up, I was thinking about the scene where it's Nathaniel Sr. saying, you can touch him if you wear one of these. And he like dangles the gloves over. They won't mind, I promise,
With
or
the
something.
dead body.
Yes. So it's him performing the
Autopsy
embalmment
or whatever.
the
Yeah.
embalming. We have now seen that at least twice. When I wrote this note down, I was sure that it was 3, but I wasn't 100% positive, so I just kept it at 2. I will double check and see if it was 3.
Sorry.
But for sure in 2 different eyes. So it was for sure at least in David's eyes and in Nate's eyes, and the differences in them were so striking, because with David, when he says you can touch these if you want. Okay, hold on. With Nate, when he says you can touch them if you want, you just have to wear one of these. It was 3 times. The first time was in episode 1 though.
Yeah.
Okay, so twice in this episode, once in the first episode, that same scene comes and Nate is like scared shitless and leaves the room, doesn't want anything to do with it. He thought about it and was like, I can't, this is not okay. This isn't me.
He runs away. And
Yep. And in David's perspective, in Nate's perspective, he doesn't see anybody in there. It is just Nate and Nathaniel Sr.
Which is very on par for Nate.
Yes, it is. In David's perspective, the second child, him and his dad, and Nate is also there too. So his dad says the same thing. And he watches Nate run away and assumes Nate just is running away from everything. That's how he like experiences it in his brain. And you also see where that's how David was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I could see myself doing this. But then he also, I think that's where the resentment starts to build right then and there with them. That Nate just either gets to run away from things that he doesn't want to do, which David should have felt that way too. Yeah. You know, he should have felt like it was.
David did feel, because remember he had the little doll, the naked like Ken doll or whatever.
Yep.
And he like showed his dad after Nate ran out of the room and he's look, and then Nathaniel was like, oh, who's that? And little David was like pointing at the dead body like, it's him. And then he like looks and he's, oh, put him up here. And he goes like, oh, like you're all right, David, or whatever. So we got that validation from his dad, but it was kind of reliant on Nate's departure.
Yes. On Nate's absence.
Yeah.
Because it is now something, and that something as a second child, I watch that with my children too, because I can see my second baby. She's not a baby anymore, but I see that happen a lot. Yeah. So I'm trying to put a lot of attention on her too, so she doesn't feel like she has to just jump to the next thing.
Yeah.
To fill shoes, or like she doesn't have to do anything to
validate herself or to earn your love.
Exactly. Reminding all of my ladies that mom loves them no matter what. And I think Nathaniel did.
Yeah.
For sure. But you know, growing up in that era, we didn't get that validation as much or as often.
And it wasn't like
you did feel like you had to earn it.
I mean, I don't know. I can't.
Did we ever
almost
earn it?
like can't even relate because I don't even feel like I even had the opportunity to have those experiences.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like where I feel like I almost had like more of an
only child situation.
Yeah, like it was just more, I mean, I spent more time with my grandma. That's why I love my grandma so much.
Grandma
like,
Gert.
Yeah. But for sure, I can totally
Should we put
see.
up a pic of Grandma Gert?
Sure.
Putting up a pic of Grandma.
She raised
had the
my
nice
ass.
She had the nicest hair. Remember when I told her that?
Yeah, what did you say?
I said, Gert, did you get a hair? It looks so good. It did. And you guys all fucking laughed. And you're like, Courtney, it's a wig. And Gert was pissed that you guys gave her up.
I love her so much.
Yeah.
She was the sweetest. But it was just like an example of differences of experiences, which is funny to also see too, like in the show, like Rico references back to his, like when he lost his dad and then he kind of felt like the provider of his family, and not that's a direct correlation or anything, but just like highlighting the fact that everybody's nuclear family experiences truly do shape your psyche throughout the rest of your life, whether you're able to recognize that and deal with it or not. And I think in this case we're getting a behind the scenes of how it influenced both David and Nate.
Yeah, I'm glad I put those things together too. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of times I've heard this.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That's been put in there a lot. Okay, then Ruth and Hiram go on a little hike.
My thoughts about that were, I'm glad she went. I didn't like that he was like, just run away.
Yeah. It
seemed a little pushy to me. And I did also like, though, that he was like, we can have separate rooms or whatever.
Yeah.
But the first thing that popped into my head was typical stereotypical stepdad coming into the mix.
Yeah. Let's go on vacay.
Yeah.
And
just have
a fun time.
And forget about your kids.
Yeah.
I know they're adults, and he was saying that too, but.
Yeah. I had a lot
like,
of mixed
slow down.
emotions about Ruth and Hiram's interaction. Basically, the next scene cuts to Ruth and her lover that she was having an affair on Nathaniel Fisher Sr. with, Hiram, the hairdresser, and they're going on a hike. And she's basically, they're just like talking, and I think she kind of starts expressing like her guilt.
She's like, I can't believe I told the whatever.
They're talking about how she told her sons, and
at the funeral.
I think it was very brave of you. And she was like, are you crazy?
It was out of guilt.
Yeah, it was out of guilt, which is so relatable. Like, I can imagine being in her position and feeling like you don't want anyone to know that.
I've been there.
Yeah.
With you guys.
Oh, yeah. Yep, you have.
But it also is guilt and bravery. They'll coexist at the same time.
100%. 100%. That's
so neither of them is wrong.
No. But then Hiram goes on to, one part that I loved that made me love him was he said, I don't remember what led to this exact comment, but Ruth like kind of stopped and turned to him and was like, I loved my husband.
She was trying to convince herself, it seemed.
But then Hiram was like, there was like a pause and he looked at her and he was like, I know you did. And I just thought there was like something so almost kind of beautiful about their ability to fill these odd gaps in their life that aren't necessarily anticipating that they would have, but they're accepting of each other. And
There wasn't a jealousy.
There wasn't jealousy, and there wasn't contempt.
Yeah.
It was just
contempt will kill a relationship.
There was like understanding and love, even though it was like
still forbidden.
A forbidden relationship or like an affair, you know, like there was still a very much like adult consensual situation happening around. They both knew what was going on, and it wasn't like she was hiding things from him. Like they were both very open with each other, and I thought that was very...
It's almost had Nathaniel Sr. known and been...
I think he would have been fine.
He would have, I think so too. It could have been an ethical, non-monogamous relationship.
Yeah.
Where everybody's involved and knows that there's gaps that need to be filled, and not one single person can always fill those gaps. And that is okay, as long as we're all being consenting adults.
Yeah. And I think we like mentioned this last time too, but I don't think it's ever explicitly stated. But I think it's later on in the series safe to at least maybe presume that Nathaniel Sr. himself had his own goings on.
Yes.
It's not stated, but you find out some things that he had going on the side that was like, oh.
It's left for us to
decide. So it's like, think they're fine. I think they can all go to heaven or whatever. But I thought that was very sweet, complex relationship dynamic to witness between Hiram and Ruth, where he like genuinely looked at her in the eyes and was like, I know you loved your husband, like, but I still love you.
Oh my God.
I love you, and I love that you love your husband, but I love you. Like, I don't know, like, I accept you for all that you are and all that you're not. You know what I mean? Like, it's just loved it. We're back to where David is really pissed at Nate, and they're in the Fisher family kitchen, and David's just fuming, and he's like, I gotta deal with this, and I gotta deal with that, and I gotta deal with this. And then Nate was like, David, listen to me. Like, how can I help you? And then David was like, can you tell Mrs. Swanson that her credit card was declined and that she can't afford the dozen casket that we ordered?
And Nate was basically like, yes, I can do this. I'm not an idiot.
And David was like, are you sure? And he was like...
In his head, he was thinking, are you sure? And then he goes, okay, thank you.
Yeah, which was one of my favorite moments of
the
episode.
They were, like, sort of reconciling for a minute.
It was like a truce almost.
Yes, an unspoken truth.
Like, David genuinely was like, thank you.
He really did mean it.
Yeah, he did. But I don't know if Nate meant it when he said he would do it. But anyway,
he did. He was like, it's like the moment when you are walking out of your workplace with your bag and your backpack, and you're like, do you guys need any more help here? And you're like hoping they say no, and you're insinuating that they say no because you're ready to leave.
Yeah, no one can possibly ask me to do anything. I'm just a little baby.
Yep. And then they did. And yeah.
So then Nate had to go on to confront the widow of Chandler Swanson, who was the pyramid scheme guy who died at the beginning of the episode. And he ended up telling her that she could rent the coffin.
Which we already talked about.
Which we kind of jumped to a little bit, which we come to find out is actually very illegal because of leakage.
But seepage. I think
seepage.
I'm pretty sure Rico said, was it leak?
I don't know.
It seep?
He was like, and he seeped.
Yeah, it was seeped. And he seeped. Yeah. And he seeped is what he says.
Yes, because liquids come out of your orifices when you're dead. But Nate didn't know that because...
I didn't know that. And I wanted to go to school to do that. I wouldn't have even thought about that. Rent the coffin.
Yeah. I don't know. So that was like say daisy, but Nate was just like, that's just like another... I think it's a very stereotypical Nate moment. He's trying to please everybody, and he thinks that there's always a solution that will just solve everything, and like we can all just, all right, now we can all move on and pretend like there's no problems in the world. And that was like...
I also feel like I identify with that too.
Yeah.
In a way of just like perseverance.
Yeah. I mean, it does end up working to everyone's favor. Like his tenacity and I don't know, which is similar to you. I think there's like validity behind that, but there's also merit to David and Rico's grievances on the seepage.
Tossing them money.
Which you live and you learn.
At the end of the day, though, of the episode,
it ended up working out.
See, that's why I love the way that he thinks.
Yeah.
Because it does.
And that is literally very much like on par for how you operate.
It is. It so is.
Basically what ends up happening is they get this other guy in who...
I don't even remember. I remember looking up.
I think it's like the son of the banana lady.
Yes! The son of the banana lady wants the Titan $9,000 casket.
Yeah. And he's just like, I don't care, whatever.
Nate's like, fine, take it. $9,000.
He's trying to do this business deal because he thinks he's suave because he deals with vendors at Trader Joe's.
Pretty much that's what he was thinking.
Yeah. And
but then they were trying to tell him that it was super illegal. They could get in trouble.
Because of seepage.
Because of the seepage. And eventually it's David. Even Rico gets involved in it. You can't do that. He seeped.
And Rico and Nate are usually like, but in this moment, Rico was siding with David. No, Nate, you're dumb as fuck.
And so that's where I also identify with Nate, as I would have been dumb as fuck. And then as soon as I saw Rico, who I had assumed was my ally, say that we can't do that, I would have been like, oh.
And you see a moment of Nate in the morgue with Rico, and he was just like, yay.
Fuck, what do I do?
Yes.
So they're talking to the dude, and they end up saying, they find out that the casket actually only costed them $3,000. And that was a $6,000 markup. And so Nate's like, fine, $3,500. And you sign a thing saying that you know that it had been used for 8 minutes. And they're like, fine, sold, whatever. And David's, okay, I guess I can back that up. He's literally saying.
He wasn't happy about it, but at the end, he was just like.
That's like best case scenario.
All right, I guess this is what we're gonna do. I don't know if it cuts back and forth or if we just messed this up, but another interesting thing I noted was that Ruth mentions to Hiram, I was going to say this when we were talking about Ruth and Hiram's conversation when they were on their hike about when he was like, let's go to Costa Rica or whatever. This was after he said, I know you loved your husband. But then when he said, I have 2 tickets to Costa Rica next week, and I want you to come with me. And Ruth was like, I didn't pick up on this the first time around, but she said, I've never been on my own. I got married when I was 19. I've never been on my own. I wouldn't even know what to do. So I think she was saying to him, I can't go to Costa Rica with you and just be on my own because I don't even know how to live. Like, I can't even go and be on a mission in my own.
I have a different perspective.
What do you think?
Finish your idea first.
I just think she was saying, like, I can't do that because I can't even fathom being, like, on a vacation in my own hotel room and having my own space because that's so foreign to me. I don't even want to do that. I don't even want to be somewhere where I would have my own space because I've never experienced that before. I can't.
It's kind of scary, you're thinking.
Yeah. She was just like, I can't do that. I've never done that and I wouldn't even know what to do with myself. It wouldn't be what you're thinking it would be.
In my head, I was thinking probably what they want us to think is I need my own space right now. I don't know. I've never been alone. I think I need to be alone. I don't want to go on vacation with you at this moment. I want to
that's an interesting. That might be it.
To just be in this space by myself and take it all in.
I can't just get up and go with you right now. I need some time to be alone, maybe. That very well maybe. That's interesting.
I can't remember what I thought the first time around either, but just watching that now. And now for the viewers at home, I had somewhat of an affair with my boyfriend, with my current husband. And so when I left him, boyfriend at the time, and ended up, I didn't want to jump right into dating because of that, because I had not been on my own in so long. And so I was just like, I just want to take my space and be who I am. Like, I think that the failure of my relationship was unfortunate because he was such a great guy. Wonderful. If he's ever watching this, you were an amazing guy, and I think you're going to be a great husband and dad or whatever you want to do with your life. At the same time, though, I still knew that it was just over between us for whatever reason, and I needed to, like, have space. However, I ended up marrying that guy that was I remember you telling me that you think that Rob might have been my scapegoat, and I think he was.
Really?
The word scapegoat came out of your mouth when I told you guys at Christmas that one day about it. The Christmas we never talked about. It was a Christmas that we'll never forget or remember in my.
We gotta put the overlay right now of your Jackie's contact photo of you.
Was that the night after?
The morning after that night.
Yep. Okay. Overlay of that photo. This was me the night after.
If you're okay with that.
Oh, absolutely. Everybody needs to see this.
On it.
And yeah, it was just, it was like when she said, I had never been on my own. I haven't been on my own since 19. She just wanted a little bit of independence, which I think we all deserve.
I think that's so valid, and that's actually, I'm not even making this up, but I literally talked to I said earlier today, I talked to my therapist today, that is like a conversation I had with her today, is like my fear around doing anything in my life that involves another person, because out of fear of losing my grasp on my own identity that I have recently gotten. It's like beginning therapy, basically. But essentially, I think that's kind of like what you were saying in terms of Ruth not wanting to just jump into like this with this person or this with that person, because it's, oh shit, I just had the towel yanked out from underneath me or the rug or whatever. Like, I gotta figure my shit out first, and I'm not gonna have it be identified based on you.
Yes.
Basically.
Yes.
Which, even though she loved him and she wanted, you could tell when he said, I got 2 tickets to Costa Rica, she was just like, oh shit, that sounds so fun. She didn't say that, but you could tell that's what she was thinking. But she was just like, I need to focus on me, basically.
Good on her, too, because that would actually be really tough.
For sure.
You would want to go to Costa Rica.
Yeah. It was good she didn't, though, because I think as much as her children all think that they're adults and can take care of themselves,
she needed to be there.
That wouldn't have been good if she would have left. They would have deteriorated, probably. And then she just walks away from Hiram and she's, I'm sorry, goodbye, and walks away. I was confused at that part because...
How did you get back to the car?
Yeah.
Who drove?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, did you drive separate out to this
She took an Uber in 2001.
But they must have driven to the...
Met at the hike.
At the entry point or something. And she walked back to her car. But when she first started walking back, she's just like, I'm sorry, goodbye. I'm like, you're in the middle of the woods. Don't you have to like... But they might... I don't know. Whatever. Okay, then we meet Jennifer, David's ex-fiance. She shows up at the Fisher family home with a casserole or some shit because she heard a Nathaniel.
This is so funny. They're at the table... Ruth, Jennifer, and David, and they're talking about how much Nathaniel Sr. loved Ruth, or loved Jennifer, and was like, oh, you're so great, blah, 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 blah. Out of the blue, this is right after Ruth's hike, she says, David, I won't be answering the phones anymore. And David goes, okay.
Yeah, he's literally, okay.
It was Ruth being strong enough to say, that was her setting a boundary.
It was. But I can
Which
also
Hiram
see...
asked her to do, said, and he basically planted that seed.
That's a good point. I didn't make that connection, actually. That
was my connection.
That is very true. I don't know how I necessarily felt about that because I 100% want to validate Ruth and like taking ownership over her own like autonomy over her life. But at the same time, I'm like, maybe you should try to help out your son.
At least right now.
Yeah, it's not the best time to dip out. But I don't know. Such is life, I guess. More power to her. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm kind of indifferent on that because I just don't know what I would do. And I hope I never have to worry about that.
Yeah. And then Jennifer, well, no. Then we cut again to another steamy Claire and Gabe. They definitely keep it more peak with the underage Claire and Gabe situation.
Yeah, I wonder if she was underage.
At the time of filming.
Yeah.
I don't know. But she was playing like a high school girl. So I think that was very tasteful to keep their sex scenes more chill. But basically it shows them canoodling on the back of her hearse after...
Canoodling?
Yeah, what is that from? That's from some show or something.
No idea.
Someone was seen... Oh, Mean Girls.
Yes, canoodling!
Aaron Samuels was seen...
Pop up Mean Girls.
Okay, funny. Anyway, Claire and Gabe are canoodling in the back of her hearse, and then, I mean, they're like sitting... They're kind of sitting like we're sitting, but they have like their feet... They're like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory style, like the grandparents.
Oh, yeah.
Like their legs are together, so their feet are in each other's faces, like kind of, but they had
That
just
was in the
gotten
back
done
of the
hooking up.
hearse?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even put that two together. Is this my spot that I was thinking?
Take it away.
I am a very kink positive woman, and you can tell at this moment that there's a kink and a fetish that is going to be relayed. And I think it's really beautiful because sometimes relaying any sort of kink or fetish, whether that's just like wearing lingerie, like your fetish is that, versus I want you to peg me in the asshole. Total wide spectrums. Gabe clearly has a foot fetish, and he felt comfortable enough to help ease Claire into it. And I don't feel like... Was Claire super uncomfortable? I think she was uncomfortable at first because she was confused.
I don't think there was anything wrong or uncomfortable about their sexual interaction around the toe sucking.
Yeah.
But it's... And I don't want to give any spoilers away, but we'll talk about it in the next episode.
Oh, I haven't watched the next episode in a long time.
In over 10 years. So you'll see. It comes down to mistrust. Basically, there's nothing...
We don't want to kink or fetish shame.
Yeah. And it wasn't even Claire's shit. But there's nothing wrong with the interaction that they had.
No. In fact, she was like, well, what do you say? Or whatever. And he was like, please?
Yeah.
Is that what happened? Okay.
Like, you forgot the magic word.
But she was so willing and so open and accepted with the kinks. And I think that's really important. As a sex coach, I talk to my clients all the time. Like, when you're having these conversations of fantasy or wanting to try desire new things, even if it's just switching up a position, it has to come in a way that's non-confrontational. You don't want to hurt somebody's feelings for what they desire. A simple no is okay and it's acceptable. So if you're the asker and you hear the word no, you just need to be okay with that, and you can revisit the conversation at a different time. And if you're the one that's being asked, it's okay to also be into it, even if you've never done it.
Just because it's not something that you've experienced before doesn't mean that it's bad.
Yeah. Well, they're not adults. I always say it this way. 2 consenting adults and nobody's getting hurt. A-okay.
But I see that when neither of one of them are adults,
I still
and
feel like
let's
it's
be real.
Yes.
Non-adults are gonna do adult things
Yes.
sometimes. Totally accepting here of Gabe's toe fetish. Definitely.
Love that they brought that in there.
Yeah. And that was just another great...
Ahead of their time.
Yeah,
kind of a
what
thing.
the hell? Nobody was putting that on major TV shows, toe sucking, whatever. But it was super funny. And it does come into play in a kind of funny, neurotic way in the next couple episodes too. So it's fun. And Courtney doesn't remember, but it'll be fun to talk about. But I did find that scene ultimately between Claire and Gabe to just be adding on to their momentum of chemistry. And I just kind of dig them. Then we go to Nate and Keith. So
Well, Keith shows up at the house because he's trying to call Nate, or trying to call David. David's not answering. We know that David's actually out on a date with, I shouldn't call it a date. He's eating dinner with Jennifer.
an obligatory dinner, essentially.
I say obligatory.
That might be, I don't really know. Obligatory. Probably. That probably sounds better.
I don't know if they're right or wrong.
I don't think that David...
I don't think
he still kept a secret from Keith, though.
Onion, he did. Because he didn't answer the phone.
I feel like it wasn't for the purpose of being secretive. It was more for the purpose of just not wanting to confront his own shit.
Yeah. He was just secret about a lot of things in his life. And it was probably...
But it ultimately ended up hurting Keith, which is valid.
Big time. Keith shows up at the house. Nate's, David's not here. He's out on he called it a date. He's out on a date with his ex-fiance. And whatever, they're talking. And he's, hey, Keith, is Nate any good?
David.
Or...
Is David any good?
Oh, yeah. Nate says, hey, Keith, is David any good? And you can see, the look on David's eyes. And Nate was like, at racquetball. Okay. So...
Horrifying.
So Keith says... oh, my God. Nate says... Hey, Keith, is David any good? And the look on Keith's eyes is like, well, that's weird. And even in my chest, I was like, well, that was weird. And Nate was like, at racquetball. He used to suck when we were growing up. And Keith, I think you'd be surprised at how good David got. And I would love it.
Yeah. A little innuendo. Love an innuendo.
Do you think Nate was putting pieces together?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I wrote that down. I forgot I wrote that down.
Do you think that's why he asked about the racquetball? I don't think so.
No, I don't think that's why he asked. It was just more so the reason that what I wrote down was when Nate asked if David is good at racquetball, do you think that Nate was putting the pieces together when then Keith's response was I think you'd be surprised at how good he's got. But Keith is looks like a porn star.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You can't say anything being Keith and have it not come off sexually. That's why I was wondering, I wonder if that may have been a moment where Nate started to, perhaps, potentially maybe put the pieces together that David might be gay and in a relationship with Keith. But I don't think ultimately that is true. But I think that maybe
it was a good idea
it could have been the, very beginning sparks of a thought for Nate.
Uh-huh. He'll think back at it once he finds out.
Yeah. And Nate is just the type that just wants everything to be hunky-dory all the time anyway, so I'm sure he didn't give it a thought after Keith walked away. But Nate did reveal to Keith that David was not, in fact, doing whatever the fuck it was that David said he was doing to Keith.
When Dave showed up.
Yeah, he was actually out on a dinner date with his ex-fiance, which, being David's partner, I can understand Keith being upset by that.
Oh, yeah. Can you
Were
imagine?
You trying to find something?
I was trying to figure out what Keith's real name was.
Oh.
But it's fine.
Okay.
And so David goes to Keith's house and
But first
is
we have
drunk.
to talk about the interaction between Jennifer and David.
Oh, yes. The dinner.
At dinner.
Yep.
This show does a lot of fake out, which is kind of fun, and sometimes it's kind of annoying. But David and Jennifer, his ex-fiance, are having dinner. It feels very, how do you say it?
Platonic. Oh, obligatory is what I would call it. I don't know.
Just...
Let's look it up.
She showed up, and he's being the hospitable person that he is. He does everything by the book. He takes his ex-fiance out to dinner.
Forearms, that's why.
And...
Ready?
Yeah.
Obligatory.
They go out to dinner, and then Jennifer's talking to him, and she's, I had coffee with your dad sometime. I don't remember exactly what she says, sometime before he died, and your dad knew, And there's a moment that casts over David's face where he's just, it looks like he's shitting his pants, basically thinking, oh my God, my dad knew I was gay. And then Jennifer was like, he said that you always worried about other people and never took the time to worry about yourself.
So I was confused about that.
Mm-hmm. Then you kind of see relief rush over his face. But then she goes on to say, so tell me, David,
are you happy?
Are you happy? Are you seeing anyone? Tell me about him. And she says, tell me about him. To me,
she knows.
She knows he's gay. Nathaniel did not know he was gay, but he knew there was something. He maybe knew he was gay, but didn't outright know he was gay. But Jennifer's communicating to him that, David, I understand. I want to be there for you. Tell me about who you care about, basically. And then David responds by saying, you want to get a room at the Haverford Inn and fuck our brains out.
Yes. So awkward. And she was like,
She said, Jesus, David.
Yeah.
Which was valid. I don't know. I felt
and then
like-
he shortly shows up to Keith.
Then he goes to Keith's.
Wasted as fuck.
Yeah, he's drunk, shows up on Keith's.
Who knows if he went somewhere else after that?
Literally, which is
And
so
who knows if he
sad.
went to Jennifer's? We don't know.
Yeah, maybe she agreed. That's also up for interpretation, although I highly doubt it, because Jennifer seems like a nice woman, and she probably wouldn't get turned on by a gay man coming on to her in hopes of demeaning his own sexuality. But you never know. I think that, David we're seeing his
insecurity.
Like him being in this box, just shaking around, and just having to kind of react as best he can in certain situations. I mean, he wasn't expecting Jennifer to come to his house, and he wasn't expecting that.
His
to go
fight or
out.
flight went.
Yeah, he was having panic responses. Regular, he was just in a panic response mode for like fight or flight for long periods of time that I don't think that he should be blamed for, but ultimately contributed to the detriment of, at least at this point, his relationship with Keith. Because he shows up at Keith's store and was like,
straight up lies to him.
hey, let's bang. And Keith was like, all right, as soon as you stop lying to me. Door slam, which was very dramatic, but also very on par. And now we go to... Wow.
Oh. The sex scene between Nate and Brenda. Again, that's 2 in 1. Well, we don't know if they had sex.
It wasn't necessarily a sex scene to begin with. It was
an intimate scene.
Intimate scene, yeah.
Sensual. And Nate sees the tattoo on Brenda's boot.
This one is for sure sexual because they're like...
Naked.
They're like...
I remember she got on bottom and she was she was grinding really good. But I don't know that her clothes were quite off yet. He was like starting to pull off.
But it was like a very animalistic kind of scene of just like
getting
heavy breathing. And they were definitely about to get it on. And Nate is taking her clothes off and like her pants, and so he's back here and pulls down her pants, and she has a tramp stamp
that says Nathaniel, or does it say Nathan?
Nathaniel.
And it's obviously old, but they did bring up, Brenda was like, what did you think I got it yesterday? Because I was so enamored
I
with you.
loved how chill she was about it. Because most women, like a lot of women I feel would be like, oh my god, I know, no, that's not you, but she was just like, yeah, what's your point? Do you really think that's about you?
Are
like,
you that full of yourself?
Yeah, which as she should be. Love her. But yeah, that was really interesting, and he was so perturbed,
which also is so frustrating. You can't, I don't know, I didn't like that part. He could have been inquisitive about it in a completely different way.
Yeah. Well, he showed his insecurities, which is
and
everyone's allowed to have insecurities.
But then he kept going with it.
He couldn't, he did end up dropping it. But he did push and was like, what is this? Why do you have my name tattooed on your ass? Whatever. And she was like, I would have done a lot more than...
I loved that.
I did too, because it was almost just like one-upping him in a way.
Go
just kind of
fuck
like
yourself and climb down from your horse.
Yeah.
And realize I had a life before you.
100%. I love her so much. But yeah, and then he basically was just like, oh, okay, and then continues. They like fuck. He shows his jealousy. This was one question I had for you. I wonder if, flashing back to when Brenda first met Nate on the plane or in the airport, the fact that she had, because later on in the series we find out the significance of the name Nathaniel, which I won't give it away right now. I wonder if, since this significant character in her life, Nathaniel, that she has tattooed on her,
and then meeting Nate,
I wonder if she has any kind of
nope, because they didn't know their names
or subconscious. They didn't know their first name.
Nope, not when we.
But then after she found out his name,
then maybe. But she definitely fucked him in the custodial the closet without knowing their names. Because I remember her saying, a complete stranger, you don't even know my first name.
What was the last name?
Let's look that up.
Yeah. Either way, it's still
look it up.
The same point that we're trying to make. I wonder if even Brenda is like so smart and so beyond that type of like thought process that I almost didn't even want to bring that up or say that.
But it's possible she had a little weakness
that she had, like a subliminal or subconscious
connection,
like reach or draw to him because his name was Nathaniel, Nate, and she has this alternate connection to the character of Nathaniel that we find out about later, which is pretty interesting. But IDK at this point. What did you think of Nate's dream scene where he like walks down?
Oh yeah.
And David's lying in the coffin and he's, you fucking moron.
I thought it was so weird. I didn't like the way that David was talking.
It was very odd.
Yeah.
I felt like
I don't know. What did you feel? Because the only thing that I felt was uncomfortable.
I felt like it was one of those moments. Afterwards, when I watched this reunion video that I mentioned several times in this episode, I felt like it was one of the moments that like the writers stuck in to make the show more fucked up. Like how can you make people uncomfortable?
It made me uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was. So basically what it is, Nate is dreaming that he walks downstairs of their family home into the funeral home area where they host the funerals, and David is laying in the coffin at the front. Coffin. Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed that.
And he's laying there and he's fucking moron. You're a fucking moron. He just keeps saying you're a fucking moron. And then he wakes up to Brenda massaging his injury. You really should do something about this.
It's so deep.
It's very deep. It might as well be bleeding. When I even wrote that, I didn't even make that connection. But that's really interesting to think about, how he might have been perceiving his dream of David being like, you fucking moron, and then Brenda being like, you are injured.
His wounding.
Driving him to find his purpose or his whatever it is.
And it's right over his heart.
Yeah.
Huh. There absolutely is a correlation there.
It is. Yeah, it's really interesting. And it's funny how we're almost to the point where this episode culminates, not quite there yet, but we're very close. But we'll come back to what we were just talking about. We already talked about that part. Then Croner comes up to Nate at the end of the episode when... Where were they? He was with Rico.
In a park or something. He was visiting the gravesite.
Was he visiting Nathaniel's gravesite with Rico?
Nope.
Was he?
Rico wasn't there. It was just him.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, you're probably right. I don't even remember. But that was after Ruth had spilled the beans that there was 2 sons. And then Croner guy comes up to Nate at
the cemetery
and is, hey, don't know if you heard, but we're offering to buy y'all out. And it's a pretty generous offer. And kind of also goes on to threaten him, which I feel like did not bode well for the Croner guy, because I feel like
he could have had him.
I think if he would have approached Nate at first, Nate would have been like, oh, fuck you. Let's get you.
Yep.
Let me set you up.
Get me out of this.
Yeah.
Give me the money.
But then the way that he approached Nate was like, just so you know, if you don't accept this, like, we're gonna...
I said, so you're threatening me, didn't he?
And that is where Nate comes into being like...
The defiance.
We need him. Mm-hmm. We need his... narcissism here.
Yep, because somebody told him what to do.
And he's fuck you.
Yes.
And we need him to be like, fuck you.
Yeah.
We need him to do that right now.
Yes.
And I think even, if I remember correctly, in the coming episodes, David even is, oh, maybe we should. But Nate is just
I do remember there was more talk around it.
No, Nate is very much, and I think they're all kind of wishy-washy at some points, but essentially the Croner guy threatens Nate and says, we're gonna attack y'all either way, whether you agree to our offer or not, so be smart. And Nate, it's not shown, but having watched the series, we can interpret that Nate does not take that lightly.
Correct.
Then they go to get the hearse, or not the hearse, but they need to get the insurance.
Well, they do go to see the hearse.
Yeah, they have to go get the insurance out of the hearse, out of the glove compartment.
Oh, yes.
Because the insurance won't cover it unless they have the big card or something.
Which nowadays you just print it off.
But they had to go to the mechanic shop or whatever where it was being stored. So Nate and David go to do that. And Nate, like, kind of clumsily approaches it and dips his head in and is just, oh, shit.
There's still blood on the wheel.
Steering wheel.
Which he probably hit his head.
Yeah, I mean, that's so visceral, and if you think about that, like, I mean, you and I, we never had, like, nothing that explicit, at least not for me.
As closure, Kelsey.
Yeah, but we did things, like, we went out to the crash site.
Yep.
And that's a very, oh my God, that's like a very intense connection to the bus.
Yeah, it is.
But I think for Nate, seeing the blood on the wheel when he goes to get the insurance out of the hearse was like almost in a way
that was kind his connection.
A weird closure connection for him. But then right after this,
part of the grief cycle though is the acceptance. And it's hard to accept things when you can't like understand them or have the proof per se.
Yeah.
So
we're not like forced to confront something that's like...
So if you see the blood of your dad on the steering wheel that actually killed him, that's easy to...
One example that comes to mind right away for me, when my grandpa died, I was like 12.
I was there.
Oh my God. You knew before I did. Mother, oh my God.
Her mom comes home one day.
I can't
after we were like lighting fires.
I brought that up without even remembering that. Go on. I'll jump in
like,
when it's my turn.
We're like, we used to be really into fire.
Oh, me.
Yeah. So we're like lighting napkins and things on fire. And Chloe's in the kitchen and she hears something and she goes, Courtney, look out the window. And I look and she goes, is my mom home? And I said, yes. And she goes, are you kidding? And I said, I'm not even kidding. And so her mom, so Chloe's like blowing out all the fires and the flames. She literally puts something on the counter and sits on it. So her mom comes in the door and I have to collect some things. I gotta go. And Chloe's, okay, didn't want to leave the countertop. And I'm like, oh,
gotta burn one.
because we burnt it. So I'm like, okay, I'll go talk to Kathy. And so I go over there and I'm whatever. And she looks at me and she goes, Courtney, Chloe's grandpa just died. I have to go over there and be with the grandma and figure things out. Do not say anything to Chloe. And I was like, I'm 12. The worst secret.
Literally. We're not making this up.
No, I'm literally 12.
12.
I'm also not a good secret keeper. But I was in this
You kept
sense,
it.
yes, because I didn't know what else to do. I was just so confused and like, why did she tell me this? And oh my God, death, what the fuck? And then she comes back home later that night.
Yeah, that was fucked up. I'm sorry.
What? Your fault.
I know, but that's so.
But I did keep it a secret.
You did. That probably contributed to your overall trauma.
I remember even asking you that night something. You brought up your grandpa before your mom came back. And I was like, oh my God, tell me more about him.
I don't remember at all. But I do remember my mom coming home and not wanting to get off of the burn hole on the countertop.
That was
fire, which was
You wanted to
iconic.
give her a hug, but then you're like, can't.
Why did we start talking about this though? Oh, okay. So Nate says there's still blood on the wheel and he has this visceral reaction. And after my grandpa died, I remember my mom had his ashes in our home for a long time. Like she was just the one who had them. And we had like people come to visit afterwards or whatever to like pay their condolences. And it was like one of our family friends. And I remember my mom, I'll be honest with you, I don't know if I'll end up wanting to put this in the episode or not, but I'm just going to say it, just maybe whatever. But my mom took out my grandpa's ashes and he died when we were 12, so I was either 12 or 13 maybe. It was not long after it happened, but she like was showing essentially like her friend or whatever kind of like the ashes. It really wasn't, I'm not trying to say this in like a negative way toward my mom, like she wasn't doing it to be distasteful or anything. It was more so just like I think probably part of her own grieving process, like yeah, like this is what we did and this is his ashes or whatever. But like when she opened like whatever and like I saw, like I was like looking at his ashes and there were like bone fragments in there, I lost my motherfucking shit. I was a child, like 12, 13 years old, and I was just like, what the fuck? I started screaming and crying. It was so traumatic for me.
I never knew about that.
Yeah. I probably never told anybody because it was like there was no friends around at the time and it was just something that I think ultimately what I really did in that situation was like cover myself up with a blanket and cry. Mm-hmm. But in my head, I was like freaking out. Yeah. But and then I remember her like realizing, oh shit, this is fucked up. I shouldn't do this. But it was like too late. But I think it's the same visceral reaction of Nate seeing his dad's blood on the steering wheel or anybody seeing a dead body, like saying goodbye to it was like almost like it's even like this weird thing where
it forces you to confront.
I'm very like, I know like we're all different in terms of like our animals or whatever, but I've read about if you have two animals that are bonded and one of them dies, you should let the one that is still alive smell the dead body of the one who died so they know that they've passed on.
Otherwise, they're going to continue looking.
Yeah. It's almost like a force of nature to confront, and it's a visceral reaction that you can't control.
Wow.
Yeah. But it's like a weird almost sense of like closure in a weird way that happens from it. I'm not trying to say
which is part of why the viewing of like a wake probably came from.
Yeah, which is
and valid. I know cultures, they'll leave the body in the room for
This is basically the last scene of the episode, but Brenda has Nate and David meet her unknowingly at the bus.
Bring your brother, she says.
Yeah, that
to Nate.
The bus that is the one that ran into
Nathaniel
and killed him. And Nate
is pissed.
Being the idiot, he has no idea what's going on until they're already there.
I didn't either. I've seen this before and I totally forgot it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there was no way for him to really know, but like he was very clueless.
Caught off guard for sure.
Like she was just like, she did call and was just like, meet me at this intersection as soon as you can. Bring your brother. Like it's important. Come. But they go and Brenda meets them at the bus stop and just come on, get on the bus. And they get on the bus and then she was like,
this is the bus.
Yeah. Nate's, what's this all about? And she's like, this is the bus. And he's like, what bus? And she's, this is the bus. And then, I don't know if she, like, explicitly stated at any point, like, this is the bus that, like, killed your father. But, like, eventually they get it. But you see the moment of realization on David's face, not necessarily Nate, because I think
Nate was pissed. He's in the anger part of...
Yeah, they're at different stages of grief. Which is
also interesting because I feel like you can go through that anger, the stages of grief, the anger can happen several times.
And you know what I also think is interesting, and that I'm just putting together now after we just had this conversation, but Nate had this visceral reaction from seeing the blood on the steering wheel.
And David was just like,
David,
grab me those.
David, he stoved off that
and grabbed the insurance papers.
And he went in the glove box and he grabbed the insurance papers and walked. And then Nate even said, like, Jesus, don't you feel anything? But
and now it's fucking twisted.
Yeah.
Because
Nate had his visceral closure reaction by seeing the blood on the steering wheel, I feel. But David didn't because he wouldn't let himself. But he
Nate's reaction wasn't forced.
Yeah.
Brenda basically forced Nate and David into the bus.
But I don't think she knew that it would end up being just David who benefited from it. I think that she figured it would probably be both or maybe one or the other. But I think ultimately the reason why Nate was reacting the way he did, where like yelling at her like, this is really fucked up. Why the fuck did you do this? Like, what the fuck? I think then we see David kind of
falling.
Yeah, just go into a trance and sit down and lose himself and he's never and they grab each other's hands and they have a very intimate moment. And then Brenda is kind of looking like, I mean, she knew what she was doing. I don't think she knew exactly who needed that.
Yeah.
But she needed somebody. She knew somebody needed to experience that, which was, I think I wrote this down too in my notes, but I wonder if there is any, I mean, as a viewer of a drama, it's very easy to be like, oh yeah, like they needed that. But like psychologically speaking, from like a like legitimate like licensed therapist perspective, I would be very interested to learn if that is actually a valid way
of coping
to reconcile a death. Like, I want to know if what Brenda did was valid from a like licensed therapist.
I'm not licensed, and I would say yes. I'm curious to know if that really was.
And like neither one of us are, but like we can see from like humanity's perspective how it was beneficial to them
for many reasons. David got to cope, and Nate got to.
But I also can see how there could be complications if somebody was like not prepared or not in the right mental state. How that could be like detrimental, maybe,
and be a very big setback.
But I think ultimately in this situation it was beneficial. But just outside, removing ourselves for a second from the show, I'd be curious if that's a valid form of reconciliation or coping or grief processing that is advocated for by the therapist community or whatever. I don't know. You know what I mean? Because like we said, huge disclaimer, neither one of us have credentials to like provide mental health advice or anything like that, but I can definitely see.
So basically, if there's any psychologist or therapist or psychiatrist watching this right now, we would love to know your thoughts on that antic that we just described.
It's almost like exposure therapy is what she was doing.
Yeah.
In a way.
But I feel like normally for exposure therapy, the patient knows what they're getting themselves into.
Exactly. So it's almost unethical exposure therapy.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it ended up working for David because
does that still make it ethical, though?
But right. Yeah, where's the ethics?
Interesting.
So Brenda is, like, smart, but she's not always, which she's not required to be because she's not a therapist.
Correct.
She's just a human.
So she's not acting unethically.
Yeah.
There is so much to unpack on that.
So much. It's so interesting. But that's basically how the episode ends.
Fuck, marry, kill. For the sake of this episode and just making decisions quickly, let's pick 3.
Okay.
So you pick one, I'll pick one.
Okay.
And then we'll...
My pick is Hiram.
Okay, my pick is Gabe.
Hiram, Gabe, and Jennifer.
Okay. Fuck, marry, kill. Hiram, Jennifer, and Gabe.
Hiram is Ruth's lover. Jennifer is David's ex-fiance. And Gabe is Claire's toe-sucking lover.
Okay. Hold on, I need a second to think. This one's a toughie.
I would mate Gabe.
Which means...
he has kinks.
Fuck.
Sounds like it would be more fun. Date/marry between Jennifer and... who was the other one?
Hiram.
Jennifer and Hiram. Ooh, I would have to marry Jennifer. Oh, this is really hard because I don't want to kill Hiram because I don't really dislike him at all. But I also, this is hard. Maybe I would kill Jennifer or eradicate Jennifer. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna go with that. I don't have anything actually against Jennifer, but I just really felt something in the way that Hiram told Ruth that like he saw her for who she was. Like, I know you love your husband, but I still love you. So I think I would want to marry Hiram, fuck Gabe, because he's clearly the kinkiest. And then Jennifer just by default ends up getting eradicated, unfortunately. I'm sorry, Jennifer. I don't actually dislike you, but...
So I think I would probably fuck Hiram. I like older men.
Yeah.
I would marry Jennifer because of the same reason that you said that you would marry Hiram. I think she was the same for
Same
David.
for David, yeah.
Yes.
She was.
And I love that. And then I would kill Gabe. Like, I couldn't.
You can find that shit anywhere.
Yeah.
That's true.
The whole crystal meth thing.
Don't put
still
yourself
threw me
in a
out.
box. Yeah, valid. Okay, cool. Fun. Did you have an MVP for this episode? I didn't
Oh,
put that
the
in our notes,
MVP.
but I almost honestly kind of want to say Hiram because he does not have a lot of strong points in the series. He actually ends up being a little bit of a pain in the ass. But
I'm not going to argue this.
In this episode, I feel like he had a very strong moment and a very strong stance in just being a solid foundation for Ruth to kind of do what she needed to do and still loving her through her grief.
But I do think we get to see more of Hiram.
He's not perfect.
He's not perfect, but he does have a lot of other great qualities too. But I think you're right. I feel like Hiram is the MVP for that small ass snippet.
That very snippet moment of him just being like, I know. I still love you. And even when she leaves, we come to find out that doesn't really sway him. He loves her and understands the complexities of being a human being.
And he's okay with being in the complex scenario that's happening right now.
Yeah. Heavy stuff, my friends.
So you gotta let us know what you thought of this episode. We'll see you next week for episode 3. I haven't seen it yet, have you?
Yeah, but I don't remember what it is. The next episode is, I'm pretty sure, titled The Foot.
Oh, great.
It's where we get to find out more about the foot.
I'll make sure to I'm going to get a pedicure this week.
Ooh.
Should we just get a pedicure together and watch it together?
During our pedicure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe. Who knows? Make
not
sure
gonna
to like and
keyword.
subscribe our... Do we have any foot fetishes out there?
You can subscribe.
Yeah, and share this with your friends. If you guys have not seen 6 Feet Under, you got to see it. We're very happy to be doing what we're doing.
Yeah. I mean, we're just having fun, but I think that we really do have something that can be beneficial to anyone who's against this shit too, which is we have no reservations and no prejudices against any form that you may come in. We just want to connect with people and have fun together. And so
validate all the feelings.
Safe space for whatever types of beings might be on the other end of this internet.
Bye!
Toodles!
What do we say at the end?
We don't have that yet. I don't know. Love you. TTYL.
TTYL.
Tommy Patowski. Should we say that in every episode?
He's going to ask for royalties for sure.